And he said, I am willing, be cleansed. And it happened immediately, not in stages, not go your way, and according to your faith it shall be done to you. Immediately it was done. There was a writer, and it talked about, if we were to touch a leper in that day and time, we would be unclean, ceremonially unclean. And we could get leprosy by touching a leper. But Jesus didn't get leprosy. The healer didn't get sick, but he healed this uncleanness from this man. So it was done immediately. Jesus had, Mark said that he had compassion on him. Jesus was one of compassion. I think we would do well to have compassion on those less fortunate to us. Jesus said, when you've done it to the least of these, you have done it to me. So we have another section here. He is healed. The unclean is now clean by the authority of Jesus. So Jesus commands him. He says, see that you tell no one. And I think this is where the crowds come into play. He's already got multitudes following him, and everywhere he goes, they find him. Even in a deserted place. Remember, they went to rest one time after he had sent his disciples out 2 by 2, and they didn't even have time to eat. So he went to a deserted place, and there was people going to the Passover, 5,000 men plus women and children, and he had compassion on them, even in his fatigue, even though they were weary. So he says that you tell no one. I think it's pertaining to the crowds. He said, but go your way and show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So he says, tell no one, go. That go was not a small thing. They're on the north side of the Sea of Galilee, and they had to go to Jerusalem, to the temple, to the priest, to offer the sacrifice that Moses commanded as a witness to them. So, I don't know, but I looked on my map, and the best I could estimate, it was near 70 miles. So when he tells him just to go, that's not a small thing. But to offer yourself, offer the gift. The gift was a guilt offering, a grain offering, and a sin offering. Not that this leprosy was necessarily caused by his sin, but this was he is healed of his leprosy. But this is to offer God's commandment through Moses for him to be restored to society and to temple worship. So this is for his own good that he would do that, and also to be a testimony to the priest, to them as the priest. The testimony is a legal word. It's like to be a witness. Sister Jean Owen was a court recorder, and she saw a lot of court proceedings. We have witnesses that are called to give testimony. So this is a legal term, as in a court of law, and the emphasis is on the content, not the person or not the proceedings. It's on what he had to say. That I think that, so what was the testimony? Was he to say that Jesus kept the law and that he encouraged the leper and anyone else to keep the law? He said, I didn't come to abolish the law, but I came to fulfill it. So what else? I think that it was a testimony to the priest and those in Jerusalem and around the temple that the Messiah is here. Isaiah 35, I don't know if I can word it, it's kind of poetic language. Let's see. It said, the eyes of the blind have been opened. It said, the ears of the deaf have been unstopped. It said, the lame leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing. So I'm going to turn, the best way to do it is, I'm going to turn to 11:5 in Matthew. When John the Baptist sent two people to see if he was the coming one, or should they look for another? And Jesus answered them in 11:4 or 11:5. He says, the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. The poor have the gospel preached to them was in Isaiah 61. So these were signs that were prophesied about the coming Messiah. And I think that that's one of the main reasons that they who knew the Scripture just had a hard time understanding it or interpreting it properly. There was a sign to them that a leper was cleansed. I think he was doing that. I think that was Jesus' main point. He told him to tell no one, but Mark 1:45 says that he proclaimed it freely. He told everybody he met. And it got to the point that Jesus could no longer come into that city because of the crowds. So he had to go somewhere else. So maybe the crowds are starting to be a hindrance to his ministry, to the preaching of the kingdom of heaven. So before we're too harsh on him not obeying, you know, James said, be ye doers of the word, not hearers only. But Jesus tells us to proclaim freely. And do we not tell anyone? I'm pointing to myself. I've got neighbors that are unchurched and probably unsaved, and I'm not very bold in my faith as I ought to be. So we're disobedient, I think, when we don't proclaim it freely. Starting in verse 5. Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. And the centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word and my servant will be healed. There's a corresponding scripture in Luke 7, 1 through 10. And I think I'm going to go there and finish reading. It has a different viewpoint. Here it speaks of Jesus speaking to the centurion. But I'll start reading in Luke 7 and verse 1. Now when he had concluded these sayings, the Sermon on the Mount, in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him, he was sick and ready to die. So we find out this servant is dear to the centurion and he's near death. So when he heard about Jesus, he didn't go, he sent elders to the Jews, elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying, this one for whom he should do this was deserving. All right, he just said, I'm not worthy. They're saying that he's deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. So Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, another delegation, saying, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, that is, into my house. Therefore, do not even think myself worthy to even to come to you, as he sent the elders of the Jews instead. But just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does this. So, is there a discrepancy between the two? In Matthew insinuates that they're speaking face to face. But these are the words in Matthew that the centurion said. He just sent it through a delegation. But I think the point is about the differences, about sending the delegations. It adds value to the centurion's words. He said, I'm a man under authority, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and I say to another, come. He sent the elders of the Jews. He sent his friends to speak, and so he has influence. He is a man under authority. He has those over him in the military. He has command over, and he has those that have command over him. But here's the point, is that he recognizes Jesus' authority. And this is one that where these other folks have been touched by the great physician and healed. He says that you could just speak the word. You know, Jesus created everything that is, and there was nothing made that was made without him, by his spoken word. The leper was healed, be thou clean. And he is over space and distance and time. And we're showing that he has authority over distance. He can heal from a distance. He does not have to touch. So when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. I think Matthew adds a little more to that. But as far as, it's amazing to me that Jesus marveled, who knew all things. But I think he spoke it for their sake, that this man had greater faith than even the Jews who had all of the benefits of the law, even that God was with them. His presence was with them in the tabernacle, in the temple. They had every benefit, and yet this fellow had more faith than they do. But anyway, he recognized Jesus' authority. So that's the great faith there. If we turn back to Matthew chapter 8, and there was one other time that it says that Jesus marveled. And it's in Mark 6:6. And he marveled in his hometown at their unbelief, that they did not believe. So he did not heal very many sick there because of their unbelief. But there's a side note here that Jesus says, let's see, figure out which verse. In 11, after he said, I have not found such great faith, even in Israel, he said, and I say to you, this is a sidebar, a side note, elaborating on the last statement, that many will come from the east and the west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, we're back to the main character in this besides Jesus. Go your way, and as you have believed, and he already commented on what great faith he had. As you have believed, so let it be done to you. And his servant was healed that same hour. I think it's interesting that unlike most of the people who wanted to be healed, the centurion was not speaking for himself, but for his servant who was dear to him and was near death. So this was an intercessory prayer or request. So this is a kind of a strange language, but I think I want to see that, are we talking, I think we're east and west are those not of Israel, I think. We had the Magi, were Gentiles that came from the east with a capital E. I think we're talking about just Gentiles, me, us, that will sit down. Sit down is, I think, is an idea of supping together, eating together, or fellowship together with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember the poor fellow there, he was in Abraham's bosom, and Lazarus, and the rich man was in hell. So when he talks about sitting with the founding fathers of the Jewish nation in the kingdom of heaven, but shows a contrast. The sons of the kingdom, that's a weird way of referring. John MacArthur said that was those who were born Jewish. But they will be cast out, not sitting down with. They will be cast out into darkness. I think this is a kingdom of darkness that is farthest from the light of the world, that is Jesus. And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I think weeping shows of regret, and gnashing shows of suffering, torment, pain. But it's also a phrase that's always spoken of, speaking of hell or the lake of fire, the torment and suffering. But we see he didn't touch that servant this time. He did touch the leper. As we go to the next part in verse 14, now when Jesus had come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother lying sick with a fever. So he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and served them. And when evening had come, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed, and cast out spirits with a word, healing all those who were sick, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, He himself took our infirmities, and he bore our sicknesses. Mark says that it was Simon and Andrew's house. They both lived there, and that James and John were with them. Mark also says in verse 121 that in Capernaum, on the Sabbath, in a synagogue, Jesus taught them, and they were astonished at his authority. He's taught with authority, and then he cast out an evil spirit, and it was, they were amazed again that even the evil spirits obey him. So as we get to 16, it says, when evening has come. Brother Philip taught us that the Jewish day starts in the evening, according to creation, the days of creation, the evening and morning of the first day. So we see here that I think it was the Sabbath, because when evening came, they brought to him, then they come out of the woodwork. They started bringing to him many that needed healing. Mark says that the whole town came to him. Everybody in the city, they brought their sick, and that he might heal them. He also says in Mark, well, let's see. He says in Mark, I don't know how late he stayed up with the whole town there, but he stayed up late. He had compassion on those people and he healed them. But Mark says the next morning he got up long before daylight. So he stayed up late, and he got up early to make up for it. And he went by himself to a solitary place, his closet, if you will, and prayed. He made time for prayer. That's a good example for us. And then Peter and those with him, Andrew, James, and John, found him and said, everybody's looking for him. And so these people, the multitudes are still following him, and it's a hindrance. So he has to go to another town. He said, for this purpose I have come forth to preach the gospel. So they leave to another town. I just want to say that Jesus, when he shows his authority and power to heal, that he can save anybody. If he has saved me, he can save anybody. And he has authority and power to make us clean. We have leprosy of the heart, if you will. And for all those who seek him with all their heart, will find him. He is able to heal. And I think we have a few announcements, and we'll take prayer requests. I think today the youth sponsors are meeting after the services this morning, and Wednesday we'll have an on-campus Bible study and online. Next Sunday it'll be the same. We'll have the 9:45 Sunday school and the worship at 10:45 to all those who can come. And we have a deacon benevolence offering day next week on the 25th, and a BBS planning meeting following the services next week. Are there any